My name is Axel, 27 years old, and until last month, I thought I understood my family dynamics. Growing up in Boston as a software developer, I always knew my mom favored my sister Cassandra. We were close as kids despite this, but when Cassandra got engaged, everything changed. My mom showed up at my apartment demanding $15,000 for my sister's wedding. I refused, offering what I could afford instead. 3 days later, I discovered my accounts had been drained. By my own mother. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how this financial disaster turned into the most satisfying revenge. Growing up in a middle-class suburb just outside Boston shaped much of who I am today. Our neighborhood was decent enough, filled with hard-working families trying to provide better lives for their children. My parents, Barbara and Marcus, seemed happy enough during my early years, though looking back I can see the cracks that eventually split our family apart. When I turned 12, my parents announced they were getting divorced. My sister Cassandra was only 10 at the time. The split wasn't particularly nasty compared to some divorce stories I've heard, but it did fundamentally change our family structure. Dad moved across the country to Seattle for a job opportunity, while Mom retained primary custody of both of us. That's when the favoritism became impossible to ignore. Mom had always shown preference for Cassandra, her artistic, sensitive daughter, who shared her love of painting and music, but after Dad left, this preferential treatment intensified. Cassandra received new clothes regularly, the latest art supplies, and constant praise. Meanwhile, I was often told to be more realistic about my interests in computers and technology. By 14, I started working part-time jobs after school, first mowing lawns in the neighborhood, then stocking shelves at the local grocery store. Not because we were struggling financially, but because I quickly learned that if I wanted anything beyond the bare necessities, I needed to earn it myself. My first computer came from 6 months of saving every dollar I earned. Dad tried to stay connected through phone calls and occasional visits, but geographic distance made maintaining a close relationship difficult. He was supportive from afar, sending birthday and Christmas gifts, and always telling me how proud he was of my independence. Still, his absence left a hole that no long-distance call could fill. College brought its own challenges. I attended Massachusetts State University on a partial scholarship, but covered the rest through a combination of student loans and working full-time at a local electronics store. Those years were a blur of early morning classes, afternoon work shifts, and late nights studying. Sleep was a luxury I rarely afforded myself. Meanwhile, Cassandra attended an expensive art school in New York. Mom took out a second mortgage to help cover her tuition and living expenses in one of the most expensive cities in the country. When I asked about similar support for my education, Mom would say, "Your sister's pursuing a creative path that doesn't pay well initially. You're studying computer science, you'll make plenty of money later." After graduation, I landed a job at TechSphere, a respected software development company in downtown Boston. The starting salary wasn't amazing, but it offered stability and growth potential. I lived frugally, focusing on 3 financial priorities: building an emergency fund, paying down my student loans, and starting to invest for the future. Within 3 years, I had paid off my student loans, something I remain proud of to this day. I moved into a modest 1-bedroom apartment in Cambridge. Nothing fancy, but it was clean, convenient to work and mine. I drove a 5-year-old Honda that ran reliably, and while I could afford more, I maintained my frugal habits. My savings grew steadily as I contributed the maximum to my company's retirement match program and put aside money for a future home purchase. During this time, Cassandra struggled to launch her art career in New York. She worked various service jobs while trying to get her paintings into galleries. Mom continued supporting her financially, helping with rent when she came up short funding materials for new art series, and even flying to New York several times a year to provide emotional support during gallery submissions. My relationship with Madison began 3 years ago when we met at a friend's housewarming party. She works as a physical therapist at Boston General Hospital, and her practical nature complemented my own. We connected over shared financial values. She too was paying down student loans and saving for the future. Madison quickly became my rock, the person who understood my family dynamics without judgment. Family gatherings became increasingly awkward as the years passed. The occasional dinners with Mom and Cassandra inevitably included subtle digs about my fortunate financial situation, contrasted with my sister's artistic struggle. Mom would casually mention Cassandra's rent increase or an art opportunity that required funding. These hints rarely came as direct requests for money, but the implication hung in the air during every family conversation. "Your sister had to take extra shifts at the coffee shop this month," Mom would say while passing me potatoes at dinner. "The gallery wants $4,000 for a exhibition space next spring." Or sometimes more directly, "I had to help Cassandra with her dental work last month. It's so expensive when you don't have insurance." Each time I would nod sympathetically, but offer no financial solution. This pattern continued for years, creating an unspoken tension that defined our family relationship. I loved my sister and wanted her to succeed, but I also recognized the unhealthy financial dependence Mom had created. Little did I know how dramatically this dynamic would escalate when Cassandra announced her engagement to Devon. The news of Cassandra's engagement came via an excited group text last spring. She had been dating Devon for about 2 years, and while I hadn't spent much time with him, the few interactions we'd had were positive. He worked in marketing for a sustainable clothing brand, not exactly rolling in money, but steadily employed with a seemingly bright future. He proposed at the Boston Public Garden dinner at Carlyle's after. "Call Me Cassandra's" text was accompanied by a photo of a modest but tasteful engagement ring. The engagement party 2 weeks later was my first real introduction to Devon's family. His parents, Lawrence and Eleanor, hosted the gathering at their home in Brookline, a beautiful colonial with manicured gardens that immediately signaled their financial comfort. They were warm and welcoming, without any obvious judgment about the economic disparity between our families. "Axel, we've heard so much about you," Lawrence said, shaking my hand firmly. "Devon tells us you're doing impressive things in software development." "Just solving problems one line of code at a time," I replied, immediately comfortable with his unpretentious manner. Eleanor added, "We're so happy Cassandra will have such a supportive brother-in-law. Family means everything to us." Throughout the evening, I observed the interaction between the two families. Mom seemed slightly uncomfortable amidst the understated wealth of Devon's parents, compensating by repeatedly mentioning Cassandra's artistic talents and my tech career. Madison noticed too, squeezing my hand whenever Mom's comments veered toward awkward territory. It was during the dinner toast that I first heard mention of the wedding venue. To the beautiful couple, Lawrence raised his glass. "We're looking forward to celebrating your special day at the Harrington Estate next June." The Harrington Estate. Even I knew of its reputation as one of the most exclusive wedding venues in Massachusetts. Later research would confirm my suspicion. Bookings started at $30,000 for the most basic package. After dinner, Cassandra pulled me aside onto the patio, bubbling with excitement. "Can you believe it, Axel? The Harrington Estate, Devon's parents offered it as their gift to us. Isn't that incredible?" "That's extremely generous," I replied, genuinely happy for her enthusiasm. "Sounds like the wedding planning is already underway." "Yes, but there's still so much to figure out. The venue's covered, but everything else. The dress, catering, flowers, photography." Her expression shifted slightly. "Mom's been talking about how we'll manage it all." Something in her tone raised a warning flag, but before I could probe further, Devon joined us, placing his arm gently around my sister's waist. I noticed a subtle exchange of glances between them. "Your sister deserves the perfect day," he said, though I detected a hint of concern in his voice. "We're just trying to balance dreams with reality." Over the next few weeks, Mom's calls increased in frequency. What started as excited wedding discussions gradually shifted toward financial conversations. "The photographer Cassandra loves is asking $6,000, she mentioned during one call, and later, "The florist estimates are coming in higher than expected." Each comment seemed to end with a thoughtful pause, as if waiting for me to offer assistance. A month after the engagement party, Mom organized a small family dinner to discuss wedding plans. Madison came with me, sensing my unease about the evening's true agenda. The financial discussion began innocently enough over dessert. "Lawrence and Eleanor have been incredibly generous with the venue." Mom began serving coffee, But of course, there are many other expenses to consider. We've been looking at ways to economize, Cassandra added, though she didn't sound convinced. Nonsense, Mom interjected. This is your only wedding. We're not cutting corners. She turned to me. Axel, you've been blessed with such financial stability. I think now would be the perfect time for you to step up for your sister. The table fell silent. Madison tensed beside me. I'd like to contribute something toward the wedding, I said carefully. I was thinking $2,000 perhaps toward the photography, since I know that's important to Cassandra. Mom's expression hardened. 2,000? That's, thoughtful but hardly reflective of your capacity to help. She sipped her coffee. I was thinking something more substantial. After all, you have no major expenses, no children, and that nice tech salary. The evening deteriorated from there, ending with tense pleasantries and promises to continue the discussion later. On the drive home, Madison voiced what I was thinking. Your mother expects you to bankroll this wedding, doesn't she? Looks that way, I sighed. But she doesn't know my actual finances. I'm saving for our future, not an extravagant one-day celebration. The following weekend, I met Cassandra for lunch, hoping for a candid conversation away from Mom's influence. I want to help with your wedding, I told her directly, but I need to be clear about what's realistic for me. I've set aside $2,000 toward whatever aspect would help most. Disappointment flickered across her face before she composed herself. That's generous, Axel. Really, it's just. Mom had mentioned you might be handling the catering entirely. She twisted her napkin nervously. She's been putting a lot of pressure on me about the wedding costs. Says I need to have everything perfect because of Devon's family. Has Devon said that everything needs to be perfect to impress his parents? No, actually, she admitted. He suggested scaling back several times. His parents offered the venue because it's meaningful to their family, not because they expect extravagance. Over the following weeks, tension built in our family group chat. Mom sent links to expensive wedding components with comments like, "Wouldn't this be perfect?" When I didn't respond, private texts would follow. "Your silence is disappointing, Axel. Your sister needs you now." One particularly pointed message arrived after I posted about a weekend hiking trip with Madison. "Nice to see you enjoying expensive getaways while your sister struggles to plan her wedding. Some of us prioritize family over recreation." The hiking trip had cost less than $100 for campground fees, but correcting her assumption seemed pointless. The battle lines were being drawn, and I sensed a confrontation was inevitable. The Sunday morning knock on my apartment door came unexpected and unwelcome. Madison had gone for her usual morning run, leaving me enjoying a quiet breakfast and newspaper. Through the peephole, I saw Mom standing in the hallway, clutching her designer purse, a Christmas gift from Cassandra bought with money I suspected came from Mom herself originally. "This is a surprise," I said, opening the door. "Everything okay? Can't a mother visit her son without an emergency?" She smiled, stepping past me into the apartment. I was in the neighborhood and thought we could have a chat. Her eyes scanned my living space with that familiar evaluative gaze, noting the new couch Madison and I had purchased on sale, the modest television, the absence of expensive artwork or electronics. I could practically see her mental calculations of my presumed wealth. Coffee, I offered, already moving to the kitchen. "That would be lovely. You have cream." Her tone was pleasant, which immediately put me on guard. Pleasant usually preceded a request. We engaged in surface-level conversation while I prepared her coffee. Cassandra's latest art series, Mom's Garden Club drama Neighborhood Changes. For 20 minutes we maintained this peaceful facade, and I began to wonder if I'd misjudged her intentions. Then she set down her cup with purpose. "Axel, we need to discuss the wedding." "I've already told Cassandra my contribution," I replied, keeping my tone even. $2,000 toward whatever she needs most. Mom's smile tightened. "That's not nearly sufficient, and you know it. Your sister deserves a wedding that reflects her value to this family." And I agree. That's why I'm giving what I can responsibly contribute. "What you can contribute?" Her voice rose slightly. "You live in this nice apartment, drive a reliable car, take vacations with Madison. You have a tech job that pays more than most people dream of. Don't insult me by pretending you can't afford to help your only sister properly. I took a deep breath. Mom, my financial situation isn't what you imagine. Yes, I have a good job, but I also have responsibilities. I'm saving for a house for retirement, for future security. Future security, she scoffed. While Cassandra needs help now. What exactly are you expecting from me? I asked, though I already sensed the answer. She straightened as if she'd been waiting for this opening. $15,000. The number hung in the air between us. $15,000, nearly my entire house down payment fund. That's not possible, I said firmly. It's entirely possible. You have it, your sister needs it, family comes first. Her expression hardened. After everything I've sacrificed for you, this is how you repay me. What sacrifices, exactly? The question emerged sharper than intended. I raised you alone after your father abandoned us. I kept a roof over your head, food on the table. Dad didn't abandon us. He moved for work and sent support regularly, and I started working at 14 to buy my own necessities. Because I taught you responsibility, she countered, unlike your sister who needed nurturing for her sensitive artistic spirit. The conversation devolved rapidly, years of unspoken resentments surfacing. Mom brought up imaginary sacrifices, college tuition. She claimed to have paid, she hadn't contributed $1 opportunities. She'd supposedly given up to raise me. She'd maintained her full-time administrative job throughout my childhood. $2,000 is my final offer, I stated after nearly 30 minutes of circular arguments. It's not about what I have or don't have. It's about appropriate boundaries and responsibilities. Cassandra and Devon should plan a wedding they can afford. And what about your responsibility to your family, Mom demanded. What about my retirement? I can't contribute much because I spent everything raising you children. Have you asked Cassandra and Devon how much they're contributing to their own wedding? Her silence answered my question. That's what I thought, I continued. You're asking me to sacrifice my financial security for a one-day celebration that the couple themselves aren't fully funding. The apartment door opened, then Madison, returning from her run cheeks, flushed and water bottle in hand. She froze momentarily, reading the tension in the room. Mrs. Winters, she nodded politely to my mother. I didn't know you were visiting today. Mom barely acknowledged her, turning back to me with narrowed eyes. This conversation isn't over, Axel. You'll help your sister one way or another. Family obligation doesn't disappear just because it's inconvenient. She gathered her purse and stood. Think about your priorities. Really think about them. With that parting shot, she brushed past Madison and out the door. The slam echoed through the apartment as Madison turned to me with raised eyebrows. That went well. I recounted the conversation, including the $15,000 demand. Madison listened without interrupting, her expression growing increasingly concerned. That's not normal, Axel, she said finally. That's financial exploitation disguised as family duty. You know that, right? I nodded, though a lifetime of conditioning made guilt twist in my stomach despite my rational understanding. I need to call Cassandra, make sure she understands my position directly. The call went to voicemail. I left a message asking her to call back, then sent a text explaining briefly that Mom had visited and we needed to talk about wedding expectations. Within hours, my phone buzzed with notifications not from Cassandra but from extended family members. Aunt Patricia, disappointed to hear you're refusing to help your sister. Cousin Michael, family should come first, man. Uncle Robert, your mother raised you better than this. The family mobilization confirmed what I suspected. Mom had immediately launched a campaign to pressure me through other relatives, presenting a one-sided version of our conversation. Should I respond? I asked Madison that evening. Not yet, she advised wisely. Let things cool down. Stand your ground. This feels manipulative and engaging, will only escalate things. I followed her advice, silencing my phone and focusing on our quiet Sunday evening together. But a sense of unease lingered. Mom's parting words, "You'll help your sister one way or another," replayed in my mind. Something in her tone had felt ominous, almost threatening. I dismissed the concern as paranoia. 3 days later, I would discover just how serious that threat had been. Wednesday afternoon found me deep in code review at work, when my phone began vibrating repeatedly. Assuming it was more family pressure, I initially ignored it until the frequency became concerning. Glancing at the screen, my stomach dropped not family messages but fraud alerts. Bank of America. Unusual withdrawal activity. Detected Chase credit unusual transaction activity. Vanguard security alert regarding recent transfers. With shaking hands, I opened the banking apps one by one. My checking account nearly empty. Savings account multiple withdrawals over the past 48 hours totaling over $12,000. Credit card maxed out with cash advances. Panic seized me as I called the fraud department for my bank, stepping into an empty conference room for privacy. Yes, we've flagged unusual activity, the customer service representative confirmed. Several large withdrawals from different branch locations. Were these authorized by you, Mr. Winters? Absolutely not. I managed my voice tight. I need to freeze everything immediately. The next hour passed in a blur of security questions, case numbers, and temporary holds. I notified my supervisor I had a family emergency and needed to leave. He took one look at my ashen face and nodded without questions. Madison met me at the main bank branch downtown, having left work early when I called her in a panic. "How bad is it?" she asked, squeezing my hand as we waited for the bank manager. "Bad. Nearly everything. Someone's drained my accounts over the last 2 days." The meeting with the bank manager brought the first shocking revelation. The withdrawals weren't electronic transfers or online purchases, they were in-person transactions at various branches using my actual debit card and correct PIN number. "We have security footage," the manager explained. "Standard procedure for unusual large withdrawals. Would you like to review it to see if you recognize the individual?" The grainy security video showed a middle-aged woman at a teller window confidently presenting ID and answering security questions. My mother. My own mother, withdrawing thousands from my account with what must have been my stolen debit card. "That's my mother," I said hollowly, Madison's grip tightening on my hand. "Barbara Winters." The bank manager's expression shifted from sympathetic to uncomfortable. "I see. And she's not an authorized user on your accounts?" "Absolutely not. In that case, this is theft and fraud. Our next step would typically involve law enforcement. Is that something you wish to pursue?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Report my own mother to the police. The family fallout would be nuclear. But the alternative, accepting the theft of my life savings, was unthinkable. "I need to pursue it," I said finally, Madison nodding supportively beside me. This was theft, regardless of who committed it. The next hours blurred together, filing a police report with a sympathetic Detective Jenkins, providing documentation of unauthorized access listing everything I knew about my mother's whereabouts and activities. The detective assured me they would handle the situation with appropriate sensitivity, given the family relationship, but warned me the case would move forward like any other fraud investigation. "When was the last time you saw your physical cards?" he asked, making notes. I thought back. Sunday morning before my mother's visit. They were in my wallet, which was on the kitchen counter while we talked. A sickening realization dawned. She must have taken them while I was making coffee. And the PIN numbers. Another wave of nausea. My birthday. She would know that. By evening, the immediate security issues were addressed. The banks had begun their fraud investigation process and provided provisional credit for some of the missing funds. My accounts were secured with new numbers and enhanced verification requirements. The credit card company had canceled the compromised card and was shipping a replacement. Back at my apartment, Madison ordered takeout that neither of us had the appetite to eat. The emotional impact was finally hitting me. My own mother had stolen from me, had deliberately planned and executed a theft after I refused her demands. "I keep thinking about what she might have been planning during our entire conversation," I said, pushing rice around on my plate. Was she eyeing my wallet while pretending to care about family duty? "The premeditation makes it worse," Madison agreed quietly. "This wasn't impulse. She came to your home with the intent to steal if you didn't give in." My phone rang, an unfamiliar number with the city's area code. I answered cautiously. "Is this Axel Winters?" a woman's brisk voice asked. "This is Veronica Spencer with Elite Wedding Planning. There seems to be some confusion about the payment processing for Cassandra Winter's wedding services. The card initially provided has been declined, and we've been unable to reach the primary contact, Barbara Winters. The absurdity of the situation suddenly struck me. My mother had stolen my money specifically to pay for wedding services I had explicitly refused to fund. There's been a misunderstanding, I explained, a strange calm settling over me. The card used was fraudulent. No valid payment has been authorized. After ending the call, I looked at Madison and began laughing, a slightly hysterical release of tension that built until tears streamed down my face. She stole my credit card to pay wedding vendors, I gasped between bursts of laughter, after I specifically refused. The absolute audacity. Madison watched me with concern. Axel, this isn't really funny. It's completely insane, I wiped my eyes. She's going to face criminal charges over table arrangements and floral centerpieces. What was her endgame here? Did she think I wouldn't notice thousands missing from my accounts? The laughter subsided into a strange, hollow feeling, grief for the mother. I thought I had anger at the mother who actually existed. My phone continued receiving notifications throughout the evening, more wedding vendors with payment questions, banks with fraud investigation updates, and increasingly frantic texts from unknown numbers I suspected were my mother using. Friends' phones since I'd blocked her number. Should we call Cassandra? Madison asked as we prepared for bed, both emotionally exhausted. Not tonight, I decided. The police will likely contact my mother tomorrow. Let's wait and see what happens. Cassandra deserves to hear this from me directly, not when I'm this angry. That night I barely slept, imagining the confrontation to come and wondering how my relationship with my family would ever recover, or if it should. The one certainty I clung to was Madison's unwavering support beside me, and the knowledge that I had done nothing wrong in maintaining my financial boundaries. The next morning would bring consequences I couldn't yet imagine, beginning with a panicked call from my sister. My phone rang at 7:15 the next morning, Cassandra's name flashing on the screen. I had been awake for hours rehearsing this conversation in my mind. Axel, what the hell is happening? Mom's been arrested. The police came to her house this morning. Cassandra's voice was high-pitched with panic. I need you to listen carefully, I said, keeping my voice measured. Mom stole my debit and credit cards on Sunday. She's withdrawn over $12,000 from my accounts and maxed out my credit card. Silence on the line, then. That's not possible. There must be some misunderstanding. The bank has her on security footage, Cassandra. Multiple branches, multiple withdrawals. She took my cards when she visited my apartment after I refused to give her $15,000 for your wedding. Another long pause. $15,000. She asked you for $15,000 for my wedding. The genuine shock in her voice confirmed what I had begun to suspect. You didn't know about that demand. No, God, no. I would never expect that from you. Her voice broke. Axel, I had no idea. I knew she was pressing you to contribute, but nothing like that amount. The banks and police are treating this as fraud and theft, which it is, I continued. I couldn't just let it go. It was my life savings money I've been putting aside for years. Instead of the defensive reaction I'd anticipated, Cassandra's next words surprised me. You absolutely did the right thing. I'm not angry with you. I'm horrified at Mom. I had no idea she would do something like this. Relief washed over me. I was worried you'd take her side. Never. Not for this. Her voice hardened. Can we meet somewhere? There are things you need to know. 2 hours later, we sat across from each other at a quiet corner table in a coffee shop midway between our apartments. Cassandra looked exhausted, eyes red-rimmed from crying. Mom's been released on bail, she began without preamble. Aunt Helen picked her up. She's staying there for now. I nodded, stirring my untouched coffee. Cassandra, what did Mom tell you about wedding finances? She sighed heavily. That's what I need to explain. Mom's been controlling this whole wedding planning process, pushing for expensive options, dismissing Devon's parents' offers, to help more insisting on handling communications with vendors. She looked down. She told me you had agreed to contribute significantly, but wouldn't specify an amount. When I questioned her, she said you and she had an understanding. There was no understanding, I said flatly. When she directly asked for 15,000, I refused. I offered 2,000, which was what I could responsibly give. Which would have been incredibly generous. Devin and I never expected more. She hesitated. There's something else you should know. Something the family's kept quiet for years. I waited as she gathered her thoughts. Mom has a gambling problem, she finally said, voice barely above a whisper. It started after Dad left. Online poker mostly. She's been through periods of recovery and relapse. The second mortgage she claimed was for my art school, actually to cover gambling debts. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Why didn't anyone tell me? She swore everyone to secrecy. Said you had your own life stress with college and work that knowing would only burden you. Cassandra looked genuinely remorseful. I should have told you anyway. I'm sorry. So, the wedding expenses. I think she saw it as an opportunity. Get money from you under the guise of wedding costs, but who knows where it would actually go. She ran a hand through her hair. The vendors who've been calling you, they've also been calling me. Apparently Mom made deposits with some of them using your card, but the charges are being reversed due to fraud. The wedding planning is imploding. The coffee shop door opened and Devin entered, spotting us immediately. His expression was solemn as he joined our table, placing a supportive hand on Cassandra's shoulder. Axel, I want you to know Cassandra and I had no idea what Barbara was doing, he said directly. We're horrified and completely support you pressing charges. Thank you, I said, genuinely appreciative of his straightforward approach. I'm sorry about the wedding complications this is causing. Devin shook his head. Don't apologize. This whole wedding was spiraling out of control anyway. My parents offered the venue because it's meaningful to our family, but everything else was getting unnecessarily extravagant. He exchanged glances with Cassandra. We've actually been discussing scaling back significantly. The wedding's not important, Cassandra added firmly. What matters is that Mom gets help and makes amends for what she's done to you. As if on cue, my phone rang. Dad's name on the screen. I need to take this, I said, stepping outside the coffee shop. Axel, I just heard what happened. Dad's voice came through, concern evident despite the geographical distance. Are you okay? Physically fine, emotionally wrecked, I admitted. Did you know about Mom's gambling? A heavy sigh. Yes, it was a factor in our divorce, though not the only one. She refused help back then. A pause. I should have told you kids, but she convinced me it would only hurt you to know. It would have helped me understand a lot of things growing up, I said, surprising myself with the lack of anger I felt toward him. But that's the past. Right now I'm trying to navigate this mess. I'm catching a flight tomorrow, Dad said. Family needs to come together in a crisis, even our dysfunctional one. After ending the call, I returned to find Cassandra receiving a call of her own from Aunt Helen. She wants to meet with all of us, Cassandra reported after hanging up. Mom, her, me, you, to discuss next steps. I'm not ready for that, I admitted. You don't have to be, Devin assured me. This moves at your pace, not anyone else's. Throughout the day, calls came from extended family members, this time with very different messages than the previous condemnations. Aunt Helen provided context about Mom's lifelong financial irresponsibility patterns that predated even her gambling addiction. Uncle Robert apologized for his judgmental text, admitting Mom had presented a completely false version of events. Cousin Michael offered to help with legal advice. The family secrets exposed by this crisis were decades in the making, generations of financial dysfunction that had been carefully hidden behind closed doors. As painful as the revelation was, I felt a strange relief at finally understanding the true dynamics that had shaped my childhood. That evening, Cassandra and I met again, this time at my apartment with Madison and Devin present for support. We made a pact to maintain complete financial honesty moving forward and planned a family meeting to address Mom's situation once I felt ready to face her. No more secrets, Cassandra said firmly. No more enabling. We've both been playing roles in this family dynamic without even realizing it. Looking at my sister, really seeing her clearly, perhaps for the first time in years, I recognized a strength and clarity I hadn't appreciated before. The crisis that could have destroyed our relationship had instead forged a new, more authentic connection between us. The district attorney's office contacted me the following Monday. The fraud case against my mother was straightforward given the evidence, but the family relationship complicated matters. The assistant DA, a compassionate woman named Julia Reyes, outlined my options in her office downtown. Given the circumstances and the amount involved, this would typically result in felony charges, she explained. However, we do take family dynamics and victim preferences into consideration. I don't want to destroy my mother's life, I admitted, but I can't simply drop charges and let this go either. There might be a middle path, Reyes suggested. If your mother is willing to accept responsibility, make full restitution, and undergo court-mandated financial counseling and therapy, we could potentially reduce charges to a misdemeanor with probation rather than jail time. This approach felt right consequences, significant enough to ensure my mother understood the severity of her actions, but with a path toward rehabilitation rather than pure punishment. 2 days later, the first family intervention occurred at Aunt Helen's house. Dad had arrived from Seattle, his presence adding an unexpected stability to the situation. Mom sat stiffly on Helen's sofa, looking smaller and older than I remembered from just a week earlier. "Axel," she acknowledged me with red-rimmed eyes. "I don't know what to say." "An explanation would be a start," I replied, maintaining emotional distance despite the conflicting feelings her diminished appearance triggered. What followed was a tearful but ultimately unsatisfying apology. Mom admitted taking the cards and making the withdrawals, but couched her confession in justifications. She'd convinced herself it was borrowing rather than stealing, had intended to pay me back, somehow believed she was acting in Cassandra's best interests. The gambling addiction remained largely unaddressed, mentioned only when directly confronted by Aunt Helen. "I made a terrible mistake," she concluded. "I'll accept whatever punishment you think is fair." The martyred tone suggested she still didn't fully grasp the gravity of her actions or her own responsibility. Nevertheless, I outlined the arrangement proposed by the DA, which she agreed to without argument. "I'll need to confirm full restitution before proceeding," I added firmly. "Every dollar. Helen will help me arrange it." Mom nodded, looking to her sister. "I'll sell some things, take a loan against my retirement if necessary." The banks completed their fraud investigations over the following weeks, restoring my accounts and reversing the credit card charges. Mom made restitution in 3 installments, the source of funds carefully monitored by Aunt Helen to ensure they weren't from new gambling activities. The legal process advanced toward the negotiated resolution with a court date set for Mom's formal plea and sentencing to probation with mandatory counseling. Meanwhile, Cassandra and Devon faced the challenge of replanning their entire wedding. The meeting with Devon's parents at their Brookline home revealed unexpected allies in navigating the family crisis. "We're deeply sorry about what you've been through," Axel Eleanor said sincerely. "Please know that we never expected or wanted your family to overextend financially for this wedding." Lawrence nodded agreement. "The Harrington estate offer stands, it's already paid for. But Devon and Cassandra have expressed interest in simplifying other aspects which we fully support. We want a celebration focused on the relationship, not the spectacle," Devon explained, holding Cassandra's hand. "And we'll be managing all financial aspects directly from now on," Cassandra added firmly. "No intermediaries, especially not Mom." Despite everything, I maintained my original commitment of $2,000 toward their wedding. The symbolic importance of keeping my word felt crucial, demonstrating that integrity and consistency mattered even after betrayal. The wedding replanning process became an unexpected healing journey. Cassandra discovered she actually preferred many of the more affordable options once freed from Mom's influence. The expensive city center hotel reception was replaced with a charming garden party on the Harrington grounds. The 5-tier cake became a simpler but more personal design, incorporating elements meaningful to the couple. Most wedding vendors were understanding about the unusual circumstances, though the elite wedding planner my mother had hired withdrew her services when she learned of the fraud situation. This turned out to be a blessing. Devon's cousin Rebecca, who ran a small event planning business, stepped in with more reasonable rates and a genuine interest in creating a meaningful celebration rather than an extravagant display. Throughout this period, I had several honest conversations with Devon about our family's dynamics. During one such talk over beers at a local pub, he shared perspectives that helped contextualize my experience. "My parents have means, but they raised us to be financially independent," he explained. "When I see how your mother created these unhealthy patterns of dependency with Cassandra, I understand better why you've been so protective of your boundaries." "I worried you might think I was just being cheap or unsupportive," I admitted. "Never," he shook his head. "Setting healthy financial boundaries is one of the most supportive things you can do in a family, something your mother never learned." Madison remained my steadfast support through the entire process. We had difficult conversations about how this family crisis affected our own financial future. The provisional credits and eventual restitution helped, but the process of securing accounts and rebuilding my financial safety net would take time. "This changes our timeline for buying a house," I acknowledged during one evening discussion. "Probably pushes things back by 6 months at least." "That's okay," Madison assured me. "What matters is that we're approaching this as a team. And honestly, seeing how financial secrets destroyed your family's trust makes me even more committed to our transparency with each other." I implemented stronger financial safeguards, two-factor authentication, on all accounts, credit freezes, with the major bureaus, and a new approach to password management. The practical steps helped restore a sense of control, though the emotional security would take longer to rebuild. The most unexpected positive outcome emerged from family financial discussions that had previously been considered taboo. Aunt Helen organized a family financial literacy session where relatives openly discussed money management boundaries and healthy attitudes toward finances. Cousins admitted student loan struggles. Uncles discussed retirement planning challenges, and the intergenerational patterns of financial secrecy began to dissolve through honest conversation. As Cassandra and Devon's rescheduled wedding date approached, the replanned celebration took shape, more personal, more meaningful, and ironically more admired by their friends than the extravagant version it replaced. Mom would attend under the watchful eye of Aunt Helen, her financial chaperone, as we'd come to call her, with clear boundaries established regarding her role and responsibilities. The journey from crisis to resolution wasn't neat or complete, but the wedding now symbolized something more significant than just a celebration of Cassandra and Devon's relationship. It represented our family's painful but necessary evolution toward honesty, responsibility, and healthier connections. 6 months after discovering my mother's theft, I stood before my bedroom mirror adjusting my tie for Cassandra's wedding day. Madison sat on the edge of the bed, already dressed in a simple blue gown, watching me with a smile. "Penny, for your thoughts," she asked. "Just reflecting on how much has changed," I replied. 6 months ago, I never would have imagined we'd be here with everything that's happened. The journey to this day had been marked by difficult milestones. Mom had pleaded guilty to reduced charges, received probation with strict conditions, and begun both financial counseling and gambling addiction treatment. Weekly family therapy sessions had uncovered decades of unhealthy patterns. Restitution had been completed, though the emotional debt would take much longer to repay. "Are you ready to see your mom today?" Madison asked gently. "As ready as I'll ever be," I nodded, securing my tie. "The boundaries are clear. Aunt Helen will be with her, and it's Cassandra's day. We'll all be on our best behavior." We arrived at the Harrington estate an hour before the ceremony. The venue was undeniably beautiful: historic buildings, surrounded by manicured gardens now arranged with simple white chairs facing a floral arch. The extravagant vision my mother had pushed for had been replaced by something more authentic and, ironically, more elegant. Cassandra was getting ready in a cottage on the grounds. When I knocked, her voice called me in. She stood before a vintage mirror, in a simple but stunning gown. Not the elaborate designer creation Mom had originally insisted upon, but something that perfectly suited her artistic sensibility. "You look beautiful," I said honestly. She turned, eyes bright. "This whole process taught me what actually matters. The dress, the flowers, the cake, none of it matters compared to the people who show up authentically." I hugged her, carefully mindful of her dress. "I'm proud of you. Not just for how you've handled the wedding chaos, but for the boundaries you've set, the growth you've shown." "I've had a good example," she smiled, squeezing my arm. Mom arrived with Aunt Helen 45 minutes before the ceremony. She looked older, somehow smaller, though she'd always been a commanding presence in our lives. The court-mandated therapy and financial counseling had begun to make subtle impacts. She was more subdued, less immediately demanding. Our greeting was awkward but civil. "You look handsome, Axel," she offered tentatively. "Thank you," I replied, maintaining the polite distance we'd established in therapy. "The venue looks beautiful." "It does," she agreed, seeming genuinely appreciative of the simpler arrangements. "Cassandra made wonderful choices." Aunt Helen gave me an encouraging nod. Small steps but meaningful ones. The most surprising arrival came 30 minutes later when Dad's rental car pulled up. Though he'd been involved in the family healing process, seeing him in person at a formal family gathering felt surreal. He embraced me warmly before greeting Mom with a respectful nod. Their interaction was stiff but not hostile progress from the bitterness that had characterized their post-divorce relationship. "Never thought I'd be back at the Harrington estate," Dad commented, looking around. "Your mother and I attended a charity event here when you were about 8. This small connection to their shared history before everything fractured felt significant, somehow a reminder that beneath the dysfunction there had once been genuine connection." The ceremony itself was beautiful in its simplicity. When the coordinator asked if I was ready, I took my position beside Dad. Cassandra had asked us both to walk her down the aisle, a symbolic gesture of family healing that moved me more than I'd anticipated. "Ready?" Dad asked quietly. "Ready," I confirmed. Cassandra appeared radiant in her simple gown and took each of our arms. As we began the walk down the garden path, serving as an aisle, I caught Madison's eye in the seated guests. Her smile gave me strength. The officiant spoke of resilience and authentic connection rather than perfect facades. Devon's vows to Cassandra included promises of honest communication and partnership through challenges. Cassandra's to him acknowledged the importance of vulnerability and growth. The subtext was clear to those who knew the family's recent journey, though tastefully subtle for the other guests. During the garden reception, I found myself giving a toast I never could have imagined 6 months earlier. To Cassandra and Devon, I raised my glass. "Your love has shown resilience through unexpected challenges. You've demonstrated that true partnership means facing difficulties together with honesty and courage. May your marriage be built on the authentic foundation you've already established." I carefully avoided any specific mentions of our family drama or financial issues, but Cassandra's grateful smile told me she understood the deeper meaning in my words. Later, during the dancing, Cassandra and I shared a moment on the dance floor. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not dropping the charges against Mom when it would have been easier. For insisting on real consequences and change. For saving me from starting my marriage buried in debt and dysfunction." She smiled sadly. "It was painful, but it saved us all from continuing destructive patterns." "We're finding a new way forward," I agreed. "It's not perfect, but it's more honest." The most difficult moment came when Mom approached me as the celebration wound down. She'd kept her promise to remain under Aunt Helen's supervision and had interacted appropriately throughout the event. "I know simple apologies aren't enough," she began carefully, clearly, rehearsing words from therapy. "But I want you to know I'm committed to the treatment program. The financial counseling is helping me understand patterns I never recognized before." She hesitated. "I hope someday you can trust me again, even if it's never the same." The mixed emotions were complicated: residual anger at her betrayal, cautious hope at signs of genuine change, protective wariness from hard-learned lessons about manipulation. I chose a measured response. "I appreciate your commitment to the process. Trust will take time, but I can see you're making efforts." It wasn't forgiveness exactly that would require more time and evidence of sustained change, but it was an acknowledgement of possibility. For now, that was all I could honestly offer. As the evening progressed, Madison caught the bouquet, prompting knowing smiles between us. While we hadn't formalized engagement plans, the experience had actually strengthened our relationship, proving we could navigate crisis as a united team. The following months brought gradual healing. Family dinners resumed on a limited basis with clear boundaries, and Aunt Helen's continued presence as Mom's financial accountability partner. The court-mandated therapy sessions revealed generational patterns of financial secrecy and control that extended back to my grandparents' era. Understanding these patterns didn't excuse Mom's actions, but provided context that helped us address root causes rather than just symptoms. Looking back now, I recognize how trauma can sometimes reveal strength you never knew existed. My sister discovered her capacity for independence and boundary setting. I learned that maintaining financial principles doesn't make you selfish or uncaring. Our family discovered that honest confrontation, while painful, creates possibility for authentic connection that secrets and manipulation never could. The stolen money was eventually restored, but the true value came from the lessons learned. Financial literacy isn't just about understanding compound interest or investment strategies. It's about recognizing how money intersects with relationship dynamics, power, and emotional health. Real wealth, I've come to understand, exists in relationships built on trust, respect, and honest communication. No bank balance can compensate for their absence, and no financial sacrifice is worth their destruction. Have you ever experienced financial manipulation from family members? How did you handle setting boundaries while maintaining relationships? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might benefit from knowing they're not alone in navigating complicated family financial dynamics. Thank you for listening, and remember that your financial boundaries are a form of self-respect, not selfishness.